Hello and welcome to the 4th Cat Island Devlog. In this episode, we'll talk about bug fixing, frustum culling, block syncing, and UI changes. Let's get into the video. We have spent a lot of time bug fixing. Since our last devlog, there have been 26 updates, with the majority of those being bug fixes. Bug fixing is often my least favorite part of game development. It can be extremely tedious and time consuming, but is critical to producing a good product. From my time working on previous projects, I have learned a ton of tips to write easily testable and debuggable code. If you'd like a dedicated video on how to speed up the process, leave a comment down below. I like to break my projects into chunks or systems. The first system I began to refine was the player system. This encompasses things like movement, camera control, and interacting with blocks. I put a lot of focus into movement because good feeling movement can really dictate how players feel about your game. Just think about it. Movement is the one aspect that interferes with almost every single part of a game. It is critical that it works well and doesn't take the player out of the experience. Cat Island originally used a custom inertia-based movement system that I borrowed from a previous game of mine. Inertia in this context means that the player would slide slightly after being stopped and take time to get up to max speed. This simulates how we move in reality and gives the player a feeling of having weight. Cat Island really doesn't need any of this, so I turned down all the values to make it not as strong. About a month ago, I reorganized the movement system, but this didn't fix the underlying problems. So, the first thing on my list was to rewrite the player movement script. This didn't take more than 30 minutes, but it's one of those things you just keep putting off, but it does make a huge difference. The previous system had a ton of physics and advanced velocity calculations. During my reorganization of the system, I had accidentally tied the player speed to the FPS. This was the first major bug to fix, and it plagues hundreds of games, such as every single Bethesda title. Simply put, if a player is on a very expensive and fast machine, they can move significantly faster. The next bug involves jumping, more specifically the ground check. This simply tells us if the player is currently on the ground and is used for things like preventing the player from jumping when they're already in the air. The problem is the previous implementation was not very accurate and wouldn't allow the player to jump when they were on the edge of a block. The old system would only look a tenth of a meter directly below the player to see if we were standing on anything. The new system adds 4 more checks at the edge of the player in all directions. This makes jumping a ton more consistent and really adds a lot to the polished feel of the game. Before we move on to the next topic, here's a small clip of me accidentally introducing a bug trying to fix the camera controller. If you are enjoying this video, consider subscribing and liking the video. Alright, on to the next topic. Frustum culling is basically hiding the things the player can't see. Using this technique, we can increase performance greatly. Before frustum culling, we had over 3,000 draw calls, which is how many times your computer asks your graphics card to render something. On top of this, we had over 50 million triangles on average. On my machine, I saw a 30% increase, going from about 50 FPS to 70 FPS, while increasing the render distance from 4 chunks to 8. Let's talk about multiplayer next. Last week we worked on getting the player movement synced up and allowing the host to send the world data over to the client. This week I changed the way players place blocks in order to allow that to be networked. This was a decent amount of effort, but now it's fully functional. Both the host and clients can place blocks and see it replicated on the other side. Here's a quick video of me testing it out. On the left we have the editor, which also acts as the host, and on the right we have the client. You can see the changes made on either one is synced to both. Another big part of any game is the user interface, or UI for short. Ruben is currently designing completely new UI, which hopefully we can showcase next week, but we are going to completely change the inventory, the workbench, and more. If you remember in the second devlog, we changed UI previously, but we didn't really point it out too well and it doesn't look great. The main point in that change was to completely change the underlying systems that control the UI, and not really to make it look pretty. But if we plan on having a good alpha test, we need UI that's representative of the final product. UI is one of those things that needs many tests and many iterations to get perfect, as it's very complex and not always intuitive. Anyways, hopefully by the end of the month I can show you guys it in-game, completely done. Previously, we had a huge problem with it taking at least a minute every single time we wanted to test any feature. Loading into the entire island every single time to test even the smallest of things got really annoying and really increased development time. I spent a lot of time this week developing what I call the test world. It is a tiny little semi-island that's only 4x4 chunks, but allows us to test any feature in creative mode without having to load into a world every single time. This feature has actually been in development for well over a month now, and it seems simple on the surface, but there were many factors that made this take longer and longer. However, I completely scrapped what I did before during the multiplayer testing and simply rebuilt the game from the bottom all the way to the top, and this allowed implementing the test world to go a lot smoother. Thanks to the test world, all the bugs I fixed this week went at least 10 times faster because I didn't have to generate the entire island every time I wanted to test if a bug was actually fixed. This is something I should have implemented a long time ago, but I often find myself putting off making new development tools even though I know it's going to help me in the long run. A small feature I worked on this week was achievements. It is now very simple to add Steam achievements and unlock them. Currently we only have 2 achievements plus a hidden one, but DeFito is still working on the icons. I'll be sure to show you those next week. Before I end this devlog, I quickly want to mention that this is not a comprehensive list of everything we did since our last update video. If you want a more in-depth list of changes and fixes, check out our blog post on Steam. Thank you everybody for watching. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for more frequent updates. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more Cat Island devlogs in the future. Leave a comment with your ideas down below and make sure to wishlist Cat Island on Steam. All links will be in the description down below. See you guys next week.